So I'm now joined in this panel discussion by 3 D2C F&B startups, and I will pass some time to each of them to give a brief introduction of themselves. So we have our first D2C F&B panelist, Gerald from Yummy Bros. Gerald, would you like to briefly introduce yourself and what your company do?
Okay, hi everyone. So my company's name is Yummy Bros. Okay, what we do is we are a meal prep brand, and we are in the business of helping people to enjoy the process of dieting. So our customers are mostly fitness enthusiasts, active people and athletes. So what they do is that they order 1 week's worth of meals from us. They are allowed to customize their own meals, just like how our previous speaker was saying, the importance of customizing your experience and your product with the manufacturer. So that is what we do. We deliver all the meals cold, and they can store this inside the refrigerator, and whenever they need to eat, they can just pop it in a microwave oven or a steamer, and their food is ready to consume ready. The foods are all weighed according to the customers' their requests. This is so that the nutritional values, the calories, the proteins, fats, and carbohydrates are all precise to their requirements.
Wow, that's very precise. Thanks for the introduction. I think we will have a lot of questions for you later on.
No problem,
Our next panelist is Sam from Hook Coffee. Sam, would you like to give a brief intro of yourself and Hook Coffee? You're mute.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Sam from Hook Coffee. So basically I handle the operations at Hook Coffee, and also recently I also did a bit of business development. So to talk a bit more about Hook Coffee, we're actually a homegrown brand launched in 2016, and it was started because we wanted to make great tasting specialty coffee easily accessible to everyone. So at Hook Coffee, we try to make our coffee very affordable and approachable. So you can easily have your own cup of coffee at home as well. So Hook Coffee, we have a subscription service whereby you can subscribe to coffee to be delivered to your letterbox, or you can also buy it ad hoc without a subscription. Yeah.
Thanks for the intro. I think a lot of us are kind of hooked to coffee, so we can't live without it. All right, so subscription is going to be a lifesaver. Our next panelist is Ethan. Ethan is from Kombynation, all right, and they are all about kombucha. Ethan, would you like to introduce yourself and your company, please?
Yep. Hello, my name is Ethan. I founded Kombucha together with my co-founder back during my university days, so during the last semester. So what Kombynation Co does is basically we brew up the most tasty gut-healthy beverages in Singapore, and being one of the first actually properly licensed kombucha microbreweries in Singapore, we ensure that all our brews are actually done with proper QC and basically good quality control. And our business is really in the mission of actually fighting the gut health crisis that is happening in a lot of first world countries today, where the gut microbiota is actually being adversely affected by the slew of heavily processed foods that is widely available. Yeah.
Thanks, Ethan, for the introduction. And of course, we are joined by our two esteemed speakers as well, Charu and Arvin, in this panel discussion. So I'm sure that the audience also had some questions they might have for you from the earlier speeches. And those in the audience, if you feel like asking those questions, you can feel free to type them all into the chat. So we will now begin our panel discussion. I think in Singapore, D2C manufacturer gaming for gaming chairs, Secret Lab has grown, in fact, into a $300 million global business, right? In fact, I think Temasek has even invested in it, which I think is kind of out of the norm, right? Because normally, this is not the usual kind of companies that invest in, right? And I think that studies has also projected that D2C will then be the next phase of e-commerce wave in Southeast Asia. And I like how Charu has pointed it out earlier on, that D2C is not really about just e-commerce alone, right? Even though people like to say that this is the next wave of e-commerce, but in actual fact, D2C is what she termed as convergence commerce, right? But just last year alone, all right, when COVID hit us, I realized that actually, 11 Indonesian D2C startups, in fact, graduated from Gojek's Accelerate fourth cohort, right? And that's rather interesting, right? Because never has it been heard that, there were that many D2C startups graduating from an accelerator in such a short span of time. So you can really see, that there is indeed a rise in D2C last year, as what we were seeing. So my first question is for Sharu. I think Secret Labs today has mentioned that they ship chairs to over 300,000 over customers in over 50 countries, right? That's rather impressive. So how do you think manufacturers can, in fact, formulate a solid overseas expansion strategy with this D2C model?
Thanks, Vincent. I think, I am a proud Secret Lab chair owner. I own the Omega. So, I've experienced it firsthand. Right?
So do I actually. I bought it with hoolah, in fact.
So there you go. I think that's point number one. I think what Secret Lab is doing, I mean, obviously I don't know the owner of the company, Ian, but there are a couple of things that I think they're doing right, which can be taken over, and some of the points to think about overseas expansion. I think the first thing they've done right is, in a market which is otherwise quite unexciting. I mean, ergonomic furniture has been around for a while, but what differentiates you? I think they caught on to that specific niche of catering to something which is to do with gaming, right? And at the back of gaming, it was not just devising a chair which is for gamers, but they have gone and spent a fair bit of time associating with themselves with gaming festivals, with gaming events, with broadcasters who are broadcasting events linked to gaming. I think they did some tie-ups with or around the Game of Thrones, for instance. So they've gone and associated themselves with a community, which is quite exciting. So the category may not be exciting, but they've created a community, or they've rallied behind a community, which itself has a lot of momentum and is a growing community. And it's a community that has a problem, which is where do they sit and play. So I think they've got that right. If I translate that to what others need to do is, if you're looking at overseas expansion, which is your question, you need to make sure that the target audience you're hitting is universal, or the product that you're building at the back of that target audience is universal. Gaming has a universal appeal. It has a lot of following, not just in Singapore, but across the board. And they've gone and associated themselves with events globally, so that it's not just a one-off, an isolated event. They are now at I think they're partnering with the World Gaming Association global event, which basically gives them global reach and publicity, right? So that's number one. If you're creating a product which originated locally, but you want to take it globally, make sure that the product's appeal is universal and that you are catering to people who will feel the same way about the product as they do in your region, right? I think the second thing is that, I don't know what logistics channels they're using, but specifically as you look to go out, make sure that you are thinking and leveraging the right channels. Now, whether those channels are creating your own D2C channel, or it's leveraging third-party marketplaces, or these days, for example, there is enough means of making sure that you're leveraging some, a platform that already exists for distribution of your products. I think you need to get that very clear. You don't always have to create your own logistics or supply chain. You would want to, but doing so costs money. So make sure that you have evaluated all the partners in order to keep your costs down. I think the other bit, which I think they've done, is the materials they've invested in, and I'm sure the packaging is such that keeps the costs down, because that in itself can become really expensive when thinking through overseas shipping. Then when you look at other channels of discovery, how are people in other markets discovering you? Whether it's Google, whether it's social media, whether it's association with the things, in this case, gaming, you want to make sure that you are also exploiting those channels. Because remember I said, these channels are no longer media channels. These have also become channels of sale. right? Because people are selling as much on Instagram, and Instagram and TikTok users now have their agents managing them. So they have become in itself a method and a mechanism of sales, right? So make sure they're there. The other thing I think you need to do very carefully is analyze international competition, because sitting here, you may not already understand what that international competition is. So what pricing needs to work, what channels work in that market, which make it direct to consumer, what is the terminology and the category with which consumers use your product in other markets can be very different, right? How we look at e-commerce here and the taxonomy of products here on our commerce channels may be very different in another market. So make sure that you're understanding that. Pricing is really important, and it will change market to market. It may even change in the market by consumer segment. So it goes back to my point around keeping your cost to serve very clear. The other thing is test your market. So before you decide to make this big foray into the overseas market, maybe pick up 1 or 2 markets which are indicative of other markets, and make sure that you're testing before you decide to completely go, deep dive. And the last bit is make sure that after you've been into those markets, try to make, you're getting back insights which help you evolve and localize your product. If, at some point in time, overseas sales becomes a bigger part of your strategy than local sales, make sure you're beginning to look at that product and evolving a product, or maybe creating a product which is specifically meant for a market or another market, right? So I think there are many things to consider when you go overseas, but making sure that you've done all of these is at least going to give you the right foundation. And again, there is no more, and this, I think the opacest market when it comes to e-commerce or D2C is the logistics space. I mean, I have an e-commerce company. Many of you run e-commerce. The first time you put your hand into e-commerce, I think the thing that confuses you the most is what just happened. You don't understand logistics. There are lots of hidden costs. That particular market is still up for, disintermediation. So you need to make sure that you're understanding that correct. And if you can't create your own, ride on somebody else's, which goes back to my initial point on partnerships, right? Know what partnerships will make it easy for you to go into another market or test a new market.
I think it's funny that you mentioned this as well, because we actually invited Ian and Alaric, the founders of Secret Lab, to join us, but the thing is they couldn't make it today. Otherwise, they would have given the direct answer to that question. But I think one of the things that you hit spot on what they actually did right was how they actually observed the global market for gaming, right? And how they were able to test the market and know the market overseas is because the common language is games, right? So if you look at the way in which they personalize the chairs, with all the different tie-ups, with all the different games that's on it, in actual fact, the chair itself, if you just look at it as a chair, there's only 2 or 3 models. But just by having so many options to customize and personalize it, it becomes like many, many, many different models, right? Yeah, so I think that's one interesting thing that you in fact mentioned during your speech. You're talking about purpose-driven, right? Because I think they actually got that right rather well. The second thing that you also mentioned was about how they leverage on platforms and channels. One of the things that they kind of made me do after buying the chair was to in fact take a picture of it, post it on the Facebook in order to unlock 5 years warranty, right? Otherwise, it would be the usual 2 years.
I don't think I've done that.
You haven't done that yet? You better quickly do it. Yeah, so I think these are rather interesting tactics, because inevitably the consumer end up becoming the ambassador, right, of your brand, all right? Because there's perks, there's some things to actually look forward to, and they're willing to do it, right? So I think they have done that quite well. And of course, back to the whole thing about buy now, pay later, right? I literally made my decision to buy this chair because it was available option, right? To buy now and pay later, right? And obviously I needed a comfortable chair. I know my previous one broke, but it kind of made me, decide to buy right now, right? Rather than later, right? In fact, that is essentially how like buy now, pay later works, right? Because higher value items, are now perceivably more affordable after you split them into installments, right? So I can immediately see how beneficial this can be to manufacturers of furniture, electronic appliances, So maybe I'd like to direct the next question to Arvin. What other kinds of manufacturers do you think can actually benefit from buy now, pay later? How could they actually leverage on this buy now, pay later model to actually sell more?
Good question. I think the premise makes it a tougher question to answer because there's a couple categories that you already mentioned that are pretty good when it comes to making use of our platform. We kind of grew up as a business with a lot of furniture merchants, right? We started there with Kasari and Hip Fan and these types of folks. More recently, obviously, with Secret Lab that we've discussed today. So it is very much naturally a category that does really well. I'd say there are niches within that category that can be quite meaningful also. You know, some of the specific ones are kind of the direct shipped mattress providers. So companies like Sono, for example. It doesn't really come to mind naturally sometimes with furniture, but it's in our home furnishing category as a whole. And that's a product that we've seen do really, really well with hoolah over the years. Actually, they've been with us for quite some time. But to your point, like in the last year, we've seen a ton of furniture success and growth in that segment because folks have wanted to invest a lot more in their work from home setups. You've also touched on a couple other categories here. Electronics for sure has done really well, and appliances. I think everybody became a bit of a home chef during COVID as well. So there was quite a bit of the Braun, DeLonghi, Kenwood type of purchases being made through that time frame as well. We saw quite a bit of success there. I do think that there are opportunities for folks who want to build their own brands as well. And I could kind of highlight maybe a few that are local to us here in Singapore, for example. Companies like Sophia Label, Fair Leather, Noman Bow, like businesses that wanted to build their own supply chain, build their own brand, get their products designed and manufactured directly, and then manage that distribution as well end to end. And these are, this is an uphill climb, right? This is a competitive segments of fairly high-end bags, clothing, or accessories. And we've seen that these businesses have leveraged hoolah as a solution in our buy now, pay later solution to really help them get that conversion rate going and get customers into that loop. And touching on bundling just quickly when it comes to those categories, it becomes far more relevant, right? So for example, at some of these merchants that we're talking about, you're able to get handbag plus the wallet, the kind of match, right? You're able to get those products at the same time, and that's where they're looking to leverage hoolah, is to kind of complete the outfit type of proposition to folks that are going through that checkout flow. So yeah, there's quite a few categories where we've seen increases. Of course, there's a Sennheiser example that I gave earlier as well. Of a business that's really looking at investing into that direct-to-consumer brand and channel. So yeah, I think it's really across the spectrum of products that can be benefited from hoolah solution. But we do see a lot of the furniture side and electronic side at this point as well.
That's interesting. I think the whole staying at home, working from home, kind of really boost up that particular category. And I think other than having great furniture and better electronic appliances at home, I guess the other thing that actually boosts up quite a bit especially during the circuit breaker period, is actually food delivery, right? And I think lots of people, because you can't go out, you end up having to eat at home. And I think one interesting thing that I noticed, with Gerald's Yummy Bro, is that there's always like constantly new products coming out, right? There's so many different flavors. And I think that's actually one of the hallmark of D2C, right? To always be innovating new products, taking extra steps to provide as much nutritional info as possible to the consumer, as what he mentioned. In fact, I think he even provided things like a calculator and a planner for the customers to plan their meal. So I'd like to direct the next question to Gerald. How do you actually devise all these strategies? How do you even know what your consumers want, and how do you actually reach out to them directly?
Okay, so maybe to provide a bit of context, Yummy Bros started out as a home-based business. We operated from a 4-room HDB kitchen with my gym buddy, and within 3 years we managed to move into a central kitchen, and we did manage to reach 7-figure annual sales in the 3rd year itself. So to answer your question on how we always come up with new dishes and new menu items, is because we actually created this business for ourselves. My 2 partners and I, obviously being Singaporean, we need to eat Singaporean stuff. Okay, I need to eat my chicken rice, I need to eat my satay, and coming soon, our nasi lemak. So we want to eat this kind of Asian cuisine. We are not interested in all your Western kind of food, chicken chop, blah, blah. I mean, we eat this once in a while, it's okay. But for us as fitness enthusiasts, as people who care a lot about how our bodies look, right? It is very important for us to eat properly on a daily basis. So I want to enjoy what I eat, and that is how we came up with this business. So internally, we always look at what is it that the Singaporean would like to eat, and how can we turn that into a healthier version of what's currently available. So if you take our recent example, our chicken rice protein bowl, we've actually created the chicken rice from scratch without any sesame oil, without any chicken fat, and it's got very low fat content. It's only got 0.2 grams of fat for every 100 gram serving of the rice. Yeah, so internally is the primary source of which we get our inspiration. And of course, I insist that the founders do customer service, because that is where a lot of customers would message us on social media, Instagram especially, and they will tell us, say, hey bros, any chance y'all will come up with like healthy laksa or healthy mee rebus or what? Yeah, so from there we actually put everything into a Excel spreadsheet, like a backlog, if you must. Okay, and then we will decide which one will be the popular one. So from social media itself, we get a lot of information. So those are the two places that we get our ideas from.
I see that you're super active on social media, like Instagram, Facebook, and some of your customers in fact became your ambassadors, right? So is it a matter of just like feeding them the right food, that's why they are your ambassadors now?
I think you also need to have some kind of like an advocacy program. So we have a refer a friend program where our customers can earn 10% off their next order if they geo a friend to Yummy Bros lah. Yeah, so that one is it fuels the referral rate. So maybe I'm a bit traditional because I look at the marketing funnel, right, as okay, you got this funnel here, and then at the bottom is where your customers become advocates, and how do they keep feeding this funnel for you lah. So we have this program that fuels it. But in my experience, coming from one failed business before, actually more than one, I realized that just by having a referral program is not enough. You can even tell your customers, say, hey, I give you 1 year free, you introduce your friend. It's not going to help if the mind my language, if the product sucks. Yeah, so I think the main thing is, number one, you got to have a very good product. And number two, from Sharul's presentation, right, there must be a purpose with the brand, and there must be value that you're trying to portray. So for us, the main values that we want to portray, right, is we want people to enjoy the process of fitness. We want everybody to enjoy their fitness journey. Because exercise should be something that you do not to punish yourself. It should be something that you do as a reward. So I think with that, right, with a good product, with good brand values, right, then people will want to advocate for you.
I think that is a very true. In fact, this is quite a common thing that I notice among the panelists over here. All right, the amount of detail, all right, that you are able to give in terms of the attention, right, to your customer and understanding them is something that I also noticed that Hook does a lot, right? Because Hook is like offering even brew guides, conducting workshops, to get the customer to know the product better. So maybe I'd like to direct the next question to Sam. How do you actually create the products that your customer wants? Because I see that there are so many different unique flavors, some of them rather exotic ones, right? And how do you even tweak your different product lines, for different markets?
So I think as a D2C company, Hook's greatest advantage is our direct link to our end consumers, which will then allow us to receive very prompt feedback and then tweak the products to their needs. So one example we have is I think for Hook Coffee, we have a lot of products. So we have Nespresso pods, we have Dolce Gusto pods, we have drip bags, we have whole beans. So whole beans are for people who already have a brew method. So I think in the beginning, we only had Nespresso, beans, and drip bags. And then recently, we started out with a Dolce Gusto compatible capsules because we have so many customers asking, hey, when are you going to do a Dolce Gusto one? So that's when we created a new one. And then throughout the years, we also realized that many of our consumers, they prefer to have the option to purchase from offline stores and retailers. So which leads us to tweaking our offering to create a more shelf-stable retail line while still keeping our D2C communication channels open. So and we also try to balance on two things. A is knowing what the customer wants, and two, what we feel is a representative of quality. Because not only we want to satisfy the basic needs of the customer, we also want to push and make a name for ourselves that we are roasting really good and tasting and quality coffee. So people will think of us when they need like coffee.
You mentioned the differentiation of your product line in terms of having something that you also put with your retailer, right? I think that kinds of gel with what Charu was mentioning earlier on. The retailer doesn't necessarily need to be your enemy. How do you then differentiate your product such that when they buy from the retailer, your customers, it is a different experience from that in which they buy directly from you?
I think when they buy offline, they are able to feel the product. They're able to take a look. And pre-COVID, we are able to do samplings. So they're actually able to try the product before they actually buy. But when they buy online, it's like they're taking a risk. They have not tried it before. So, based on the reviews our customers give, based on our social media, everyone's talking about Hook Coffee. And then, when they try, so it's very different when you buy it offline. But we try to keep our prices the same so that, there's not much of a difference whether you purchase online or not. And with offline, you do not need to wait for delivery. So you can, if you're urgent, you can get it immediately. But when you buy it online, you have to wait for a longer period of time.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned about the sampling part, right? Because I see that for Kombynation, right, there is something similar there in terms where you actually conduct workshops to raise the product awareness. But in your case, kombucha is really a lesser known beverage compared to coffee, right? So Ethan, how do you actually find your first customer and in fact increase your customer base for your product?
Actually, thanks for the question. So something quite that we actually do differently from the other two companies, right, is that we didn't go into D2C because we wanted to at the start it was really because we had no choice. When we started, we actually really wanted to go B2B, but whenever we had any meetings lined up, all of our the purchasing manager will be asking like, oh, yours is a new brand, how many have you sold? This kind of questions, which is like a chicken and egg. So then that's when we realized like one of the points that Arvin mentioned, that the advantages of going to D2C, right, is a faster go-to-market, which is really true. So, but besides the faster go-to-market, and it also gives us a higher profit margin at the start. So yeah, to acquire our very first few customers, we really had to still do a lot of groundwork. So it's not like just so launching an online brand is not just putting it online and then like hoping people will come. We also like did a lot of groundwork where we attended a lot of like farmers pop-up markets, and that's actually where we actually got our first few customers. And then I think having a referral program is very important as well, because then that will allow the word of mouth kind of marketing to start spreading your brand, and that's how we slowly build up to where we are now. Yeah.
So since Hook Coffee, have a subscription plan, do you think that this will be something that Kombynation will also do to offer a subscription plan?
Yeah, so we actually had a subscription plan. We were before we actually launched our subscription plan, we were kind of hesitant because we didn't know like whether anyone would want to even subscribe to something like kombucha, because back when we started, really no one has heard about it. It was only during the whole lockdown period when people were stuck at home and had nothing to do that somehow the knowledge of what kombucha is suddenly increased exponentially. Yeah, and we also try to catch that trend where we realize that, okay, since people are kind of bored at home now, and they're looking for something to do, that's when we started launching our kombucha brewing kits and our workshops as well. It was really during the pandemic. Because yeah, like I mentioned, during the start when we launched the company, we really envisioned ourselves as really a pure B2B serving to cafes and different retailers. But yeah.
Oh,
But
that's
looking back, we were kind of glad that we had this D2C infrastructure in place as well, which kind of allowed us to really pivot during the whole lockdown period when all our cafe partners were all down. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that that is indeed a blessing in disguise, right?
Yeah.
Being turned away by your B2B customer only to realize that actually D2C is a better route for you.
Yeah.
Um, maybe just to hear some opinions from Sam as well. You know, both of you, Hook and Kombynation, you literally have fast consumable products, right? So in this case, I think it's really good if you could offer a subscription to incentivize customers to constantly return. But the thing is, how do you then convince your first-time customer to become a subscriber, right? Because buying once is easier than getting them to keep on buying over and over and over again, right? And of course, after which you will then have the added complexity of having to fulfill a mixture, of both ad hoc orders as well as recurring purchases, right? So how are you able to do that? Is there some like digital tools that you're actually using to achieve this?
I think for the second part of the question, regarding the added complexity of fulfilling ad hoc orders, we actually use this digital tool called Zero. So with Zero, you are able to track inventory movement, and it also helps us to do recurring invoices for our B2B customers that help us, and then that help us to like paint the picture on the coffee level we are at and to organize everything properly. And then the data on Zero helps us to have more insights into the typical consumer preference. And that also allows us to be more informed on what coffee or equipment we should bring in next. And for the subscription part, we actually rely a lot on our community of the Hook subscribers to share their experiences and feedbacks on our products. And we love it when they talk about it online, because coffee is ultimately a very subjective product. And having many reviews help these first timers sense out that, this is the brand that we want to try and subscribe. And also for Hook Coffee, our subscription is very flexible. So even if you have your first delivery, you don't like it, you can actually cancel anytime. So essentially, we don't tie you down. You can cancel if you don't like it. And if you say like, further down the road, you find that, oh, I didn't like Hook Coffee then, but I would like to give it another try now. You can easily just go back online and resubscribe. So you do not need to go through the whole process again. You can just reactivate your account. So I think for Hook Coffee, everything is very flexible, which is why the customers, they don't mind trying to subscribe first.
Sounds like the seamlessness is really core to how you're able to do that. What about Ethan and Gerald? Are there any particular tools that actually help you to be able to manage this?
Okay, I'll go first. Yeah, so interestingly, when we first started, we were using another website builder that is not Shopify, and we realized that it was very, very clunky in a way. And then in a way, I don't know what is up with that, but it also prevented us from getting ranked high on SEO. So I think choosing the right platform to build your website on at the start is very important. And yeah, with that other website, right, we weren't able to really, if we had stuck with that, we wouldn't have been able to launch our subscription service as easily as we had done with Shopify. So I think, yeah, Shopify was actually a pretty good platform in terms of both allowing our website to start ranking and also yeah, launching like these kind of differentiated services.
maybe for the benefit of the audience as well, would you mind actually also sharing like how long did it actually take for you to actually set up the store, and maybe to what range of a cost did it actually cost you to do that?
Okay, so for the first website, okay, I'll just share it. It's weeks. I basically set it up literally, I think overnight. Yeah, and then with Shopify as well, it was it didn't take too long, maybe about 1 to 2 days, but it's not because it's harder to use, but more of like because this is the second website that we are setting up, so we kind of wanted more control over what we wanted to see in the website. That's why it took a bit longer. Yeah.
I see. So what kind of a cost consideration were you also looking at when you were looking for tools out there for you to use?
Firstly, it has to be kind of tiered so that it suits your needs. So you don't like pay for things that you don't use. Like maybe you don't have that traffic yet don't have that much traffic at the start, so you don't want to pay for something with maybe that gives you very high bandwidth. Yeah. And then I think flexibility is very important as well. Like the flexibility to redesign. So like before we actually thought of designing ourselves, we did look into a lot of people are trying to sell the website building services, and usually they would use platforms that are harder for the layman to use, like Magento, etc. So like for Magento, for example, you want to change anything or say WordPress, you have to actually know how to code. Whereas for the platforms that we use, we didn't. So that was the main consideration. Yeah.
I think that brings up two very good points, right? Flexibility and scalability in terms of how elastic it is for you to scale. It's very important for you to be nimble. Maybe Gerald, you have things to add on about this in terms of tools that you're using?
So when we started out, we were lucky because I knew how to use WordPress WooCommerce. So the cost of setting up our e-commerce store was just the cost of buying an online a team from Team Forest, and also the web hosting. So when we started off, the web hosting was only like $20-$30 per month. A big bulk of the cost went into time and effort to actually set up everything. Then into our second year, we noticed that the website started to become super slow because of the traffic. So what we did was we upgraded our hosting. We went to Vodian and we got a VPS plan, a virtual private server. Yeah, so the cost from $20 a month went up to about $100+ a month. And because we had to, there are these things called plugins for WordPress. Yeah, and we needed premium plugins for things like allowing customers to choose their delivery dates, giving them more options on the checkout page, and also enabling the meal customizing options on the store's front end. So all this required premium plugins. And as the traffic grew, we needed better hosting. So eventually our cost now is about between $300 to $400 a month just for hosting itself. And it came to a point where my knowledge on using WordPress WooCommerce is so limited that I couldn't do any more customization with it. So I have to engage this company called Massive Infinity to rebuild a whole new website for me. So we're going to be streamlining and we're going to be adding some custom features. So that one is on the storefront. But I think the important thing is on delivery. So what are the kind of tools that we use to, number one, monitor the delivery, and number two, like what Charu has mentioned, give customer the feedback on where are the meals at this point of time. Okay, so just to provide some context, we deliver several times a week, and we promise the customer a 3-hour time frame. So you can choose like between 7 to 10 p.m. Your meals will arrive during that time. There are many reasons why we give a 3-hour time frame. Everything from number one, the meals being frozen, and number two, we need the customer to be present at the address that they have indicated. If not, really the food outside is spoiled and the person get food poisoning is a big problem. Okay, so when we started, right, how we monitored the delivery was through WhatsApp. Yeah, it's very ridiculous. So all the drivers, we outsource our delivery, by the way, to a third-party company, they are also not very technically advanced. So they also use WhatsApp. So they will add all their drivers into this WhatsApp chat group, and all the drivers will share their 8-hour location. And then from there, I'll look. And if customers were to ask me, hey, where's my food? Then I can tell you, you stay at Orchard Road, right? Okay, the guy is now somewhere at Queenstown. Maybe you will need another 1 hour. Yeah, so it was very primitive way of doing it. And for us, right, it was very passive, meaning that the customer has to come to us. We cannot go and tell the customer because we won't know what the customer is thinking. So what we did was we custom built a platform. I got a friend to do it for me. So basically, this platform allows us to do 3 things. Number 1, it allows me to segregate all the locations. So in one evening itself, right, we can do about maybe say 300 different locations. So we can split it up into different drivers, and each of the drivers will get their own locations. They have a separate login, and the route will be done for them. So we use Google Maps API to find the shortest possible route. That if you follow this right, you will reach there before 3 hours. Okay, so that's the driver side. And then on the customer's end, they will actually get a estimation of within that 3 hours, which hour would you most likely to receive your meal. So again, this data, this information is calculated using Google Maps API. Yeah, so when we implemented that, right, not only did we receive much lesser complaints, there were lesser inquiries on, hey, where's my food? Okay, and the best thing was that this resulted in more referrals, because we got feedback, right, that people want to order from us because they are confident in our delivery. Yeah, and but then of course we will give credit to our vendor say, oh no it's because our Abing driver his GT very fast, I can reach you very quickly. But it's because of this tool that helps us to give the customer like a real-time update. Because if let's say there's a traffic jam, or let's say there's a customer stay in a condo and he's not contactable and we cannot go up to his house, this 1 hour ETA will actually extend. Yeah, and the rest of the customers can see this in real time. Yeah, so that is in terms of how we give real-time feedback to the customer. So I think, when you spend money, right, whether it's especially online, you want to feel secure that, hey, my thing is on the way, So if you have not ordered from us before and during that 3 hours, there's no information, it's a very bad brand experience. You get what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And I think even when I order my Secret Lab chair or anything on D2C, I realized that the customer experience, it's way better in terms of how transparent they are in always telling us like when a certain thing will arrive. And I think I like your point about the fact that your food, all right, gets delivered on time and people are actually looking for it, because a hungry person is an angry person. All right, so I think the other point, I think, which in fact, if I would bring back the question to Charu, was on the fact that you mentioned this just now, that if the food actually spoils, right, whose fault is it going to be, right? Because if you say because it's going to be late, that's why it's spoiled and everything. So I think earlier on, Charu mentioned about upcoming technologies as well, in supply chain, especially using blockchain, how we can actually track and ensure that the food comes from the right source, all right, and that is actually legit in terms of authenticity, all right. So maybe Charu might want to chime in a bit on your insights on how we can actually use technology to help with all this tracking.
Yeah, thanks, Vincent. I mean, I think going back to the point on purpose-driven, right? So the millennials or the younger consumers are a lot more aware and want to participate in the manufacturing of food, right? Whether it's through understanding where the raw materials come from, or what are the processes, ethically or otherwise, that have been put into manufacturing food, to the fact that it's come onto a shelf. It could even be that they want to, in order to be able to get that item, they want to be able to replace it with something which they already have, right? This whole concept of a circular economy. The most famous use cases, so to speak, of blockchain have been around track and trace. have been around ensuring that you're able to figure out from the point of origin to the point of distribution and everything in between, have a verifiable, immutable account of where your products have traveled and be able to track that all the way. Having said so, there is a cost to these technologies. I think the technology itself is available. However, there are also various platforms that can make the access to these technologies easier for smaller businesses, right? So even if it means that you don't want to completely explore, and I'm talking both to the SMB segment, but also the bigger brands probably can afford it. But the smaller brands, even if they can't afford it, the ability to be able to provide, as Gerald, you said, smaller insights, real-time insights, nearer time insights, or the fact that you're able to tell the consumer where this product was earlier, where it is going. Even when you get the product, if there is a story associated with the product, which says, this piece of clothing used to be something else earlier, or the notebook that you bought was made out of, trees in so-and-so forest. Even if you don't provide the track and trace component, even if you don't provide the entire, you don't provide all of the information available, consumers want some information that make them feel good about using the product or the service they're using, to be associated with the values they stand for. So I think it's not just about, again, even if you get the technology, but your brand does not stand for it, will not help you stand for the values you have. I mean, not related to this track and trace example, but I think Arvin mentioned one of the other things, in COVID that I did buy was the mattress in a box. We've talked about two or three very large Singapore-based businesses that have made it very big, again, in this particular segment. And they were all for innovation, how the mattress was designed elsewhere, how it could get to me in a couple of hours. But when it did, it got delivered to me by two very grumpy people who threw the box and did not want anything to do with the mattress. Like, they couldn't wait to get out of this place any faster, right? And for me, that spoiled the entire brand experience. If you can get me something all the way wrapped in a box, and compress it to the size of nothing, something that's that big, surely your supply chain can be educated enough to make that experience come alive, right? So back to the point that sometimes technology or the messaging can be on point, but the execution is not on point, right? And the execution not being on point can completely take away from the value that you're trying to espouse. So to the point about making sure that you're purpose-driven, every single messaging on your brand should convey that. Yes, there are technologies that support you now to be able to trace, track, make sure that you have, an immutable ledger of where your product comes from. But then make sure that the DNA of the company and everything, including your supply chain, stands for that, right? I mean, every time I'm on that mattress, I cannot take away the experience I had with respect to how that mattress was thrown, right? So every part of the process needs to play to the brand, not just the technology itself.
I hope you can sleep on that mattress well, despite of the bad memories. But I think what you mentioned there about the what we call the last mile experience is very, very important. I mean, in my case, I opted to have the person actually, assemble the chair for me, right? And the person actually did it very well. It was very friendly. In fact, he did it in record time. And I think that actually, ends up contributing, to my experience, right? In fact, it was even asking me like where to put the chair after that. It was carrying the chair in for me and things like that, right? And I think on the point about the whole blockchain, being able to track, and trace, the other angle, of course, is the fact that we're going to more sustainability kind of an angle, right? And circular economy. So I think like even for example, Hook Coffee have their Yaya Kakaya, right? I think that coffee line comes from, if I'm not wrong, Brazil, Colombia, India. They'd be quite interesting, for end consumers to actually, validate, right, the sources of where all these coffee beans, are coming from, right? But I think the other interesting thing about blockchain is, other than the immutable ledger portion, I think the other interesting thing that's happening right now is with the cryptocurrency part, right? So I think I will direct probably the next question to Arvin, since this is a more fintech thing. So right now we are like, buy now, pay later. But one of the thing about buying now and paying later is the fact that actually companies like hoolah is actually taking up the credit, right? Because you're paying the merchants first, and hoping that the end consumer will actually pay you back, right? And will not default on the payment, right? So I thought it'd be interesting to actually, probably, seek your opinion on this, right? Because right now, with all the different tokenomics that's out there in blockchain, cryptocurrency, I think there are some things that are quite aligned to what D2C brands are doing, right? Like for example, they mentioned a lot about the referrals, a lot about even a rewards program and things like that. So I'm just wondering, is there a avenue, all right, for maybe a cryptocurrency powered version of hoolah, all right, where you can literally, directly engage the D2C brands to earn points through your payment system, and maybe even offer a way for people to stake their currency, as part of your pool, all right, for the credit portion, right, in your buy now pay later. What do you think, Arvin?
Interesting. Surprisingly, not the first time I've gotten that question. It's interesting because I typically get the, do you use blockchain technology as part of your business? And I normally give an answer of, doesn't matter technology I use as long as I'm delivering value, right, to the customers that are involved. So that's a much easier question than the one you're asking, because you're asking a very specific application of actually using crypto as part of the engagement model, isn't it? I think we wouldn't drive the application of a new technology, but if we saw that something was in demand from consumers and our users in general, we would gravitate towards it. So I'll put it this way and maybe use a non-crypto example to make that point. For example, in Malaysia, a lot of our customers are saying that they want to be able to make their repayments using bank transfers, digital bank transfers on FBX. Okay. Spoke to customers in some of the other markets that we're expanding to, Korea, for example. A lot of the transactions happen using local payment methods, Line Pay or a few other wallet operators in that market, right? So we would gravitate towards whatever helps us be more local in the context of that market. Using crypto as a way to, I guess, pass on the credit position of the business at this point probably takes away from a portion of the value creation that we have with our merchants. And that's a chargeable portion of the business, I'll put it that way. In our economic model, we do charge for the value that we bring. And it's not just about, allowing the buy now, pay later component. We are, processing fees, the risk. So, we don't hope and pray that folks pay us back on time. We take a position on risk, one that is driven through technology as well. And the working capital element, we access working capital and make it available to the merchants at scale, where a lot of merchants would not be able to do so. Now, passing that on definitely reduces risk and gives us more capacity to grow. But it also potentially takes away a little of the value. Now, we'd have to make that work and balance it out. Is the upside for us as a business greater than the potential erosion of margins? But it could also mean something where we pass through the earnings or benefits that we get from that directly to our merchants to make our solution even more accessible to more merchants out there. So it's a really good thought for us to look at any options that we have around working capital.
I think there's a question for you from the audience as well, Arvin, since you are talking about how hoolah, always looks into helping to value add the merchant, and basically this is what you're charging the merchant for. I think the question here by Carol is saying that does the hoolah solution support a manufacturer's product that are ready to be sold or check out in the cart, but does it actually work for customizable product or products that are intangible, like a customizable scent product? Wow,
that's very, very, very specific, Carol. Absolutely. We work with retailers and service providers actually especially here that sell slightly less tangible goods. Trying to think of a good solution. Skin Ink. Skin Ink has some custom products, right? So you can actually create serum that's specific to your skin's composition. Whether that's in store or online, you can work with their staff in store to essentially create serum that's customized to you. At the end of the day, whether that's a physical retail environment where the final price is calculated and then passed through to us as part of the process, or in an e-commerce environment where any permutation or combination leads to a dollar value, that dollar value is then pushed to hoolah through an API connection, very simple process. And we can go from there to charge or create the repayment schedule around that dollar amount. So definitely we've got examples of that already today. If you dip into some of the lifestyle brands, some of the beauty brands that we work with, and a lot more of the beauty and wellness that we work with is actually physical, like salons, those types of places where you can go to and get that face-to-face treatment.
I think maybe to expand on that as well, does that mean that it is also possible that we can actually use hoolah to even pay for services, right? Because in a way, customizing a product is a kind of a service as well.
It is. And I'll give a very tangible place where we're looking at this is in travel, and even on custom vacations, right? So we're looking at, as the world returns to some normalcy over the next few months, we do expect that folks, whether that's a staycation or looking to go nearby for a period of time, it will come back. It may not be, airlines to start with, but we are working with the experiential side of travel to make sure that you can get access to those intangible solutions and services very, very soon. We have played around with it before, right before COVID hit, unfortunately. But definitely the service side, and I would say take a look specifically like in our store directory around beauty. I think that's a place where it's very, very clear alternatives there right now where you can get access to physical retail environments where we're helping these customers essentially sell some of the packages as well, right? It can add up fairly quickly if you do 5 sessions, 10 sessions. Of facials, things like this. Definitely those services can be acquired with hoolah. We've got salons that are using hoolah now as well.
Nice. I think that kinds of helps everyone understand, that there is actually quite a number of things that you can do with buy now, pay later, right? So it's not just a fixed product in which you put on your store. I think we are running short of time, so I think we have reached towards the end of this session.